My fiancé threatened, "Stay away from my family, or I'll expose you." I replied, "Not a word." Then, I sent her parents proof she forged their names on a second mortgage for their home. Her father was left frantically calling me about the lender's demand letter. I, 34, male, always thought the little deceptions were the most telling. Not the grand, cinematic lies, but the small, quiet ones. The ones that slide into the cracks of everyday life and fester. My fiancée, Kimberly, 32, was a master of the small deception. It was things I barely registered at first. She'd say she paid a bill that I would later get an overdue notice for. She'd tell a story to friends that was a slightly more polished, more dramatic version of reality, with her cast in a slightly better light. Harmless, I thought. The kind of social lubrication that keeps the world spinning. Everyone does it to some degree. I'm a planner, an architect. My entire life is built on precision, on understanding that a weak foundation compromises the entire structure. I make good money. I save. I invest. I'm not extravagant, but I'm comfortable. Kimberly loved that stability. She called me her rock. It was a role I was happy to play. When we got engaged, I suggested a reasonable budget for the wedding. A generous one, actually. I opened a joint savings account and deposited the full amount, giving her the debit card to manage the vendors. "My treat," I said. "My gift to our future. You handle the beautiful parts. I've got the foundation covered." She smiled. That brilliant, all-consuming smile that always made me feel like the only man in the world. The first crack in the foundation appeared on a Tuesday. An email from our stationer. Subject: Invoice 743B, Final Notice. It was for the invitations, a simple charge of $1,800. The email stated the check she'd sent had been returned for insufficient funds. Insufficient funds. I knew for a fact there was over $35,000 in that account. I transferred another $2,000 just to be safe and replied to the stationer, apologizing for the mix-up and assuring them a new payment was on its way. Then, I logged into the joint account. Was I wrong for checking up on her? I didn't think so. It was our money for our future. The balance was $74.19. My blood went cold. It wasn't a slow chill. It was a sudden, heart-stopping plunge into ice water. I scrolled through the transaction history. It wasn't a death by 1,000 cuts from wedding purchases. It was a slow, systematic bleed over the last 2 months. A series of large cash withdrawals. Many were for $500, the daily ATM limit made every other day like clockwork. But 2 were brazen. In-person teller withdrawals from a branch across town, each for a staggering $10,000. She must have smiled sweetly at the teller as she signed the slip. This wasn't about a wedding. This was something else entirely. My first thought, strangely, wasn't rage. It was a clinical, detached curiosity. The mechanics of it were audacious. Kimberly had always talked about her parents, Paul and Donna, with a kind of pitying affection. They were asset-rich, cash-poor, she'd say. A beautiful home in a nice neighborhood, but they'd over-leveraged, made bad investments. Paul was a proud man, too proud to admit he was struggling. I thought about the mail. For the past 2 months, Kimberly had made a point of getting the mail first. I thought it was a sweet, domestic little habit. Now it seemed sinister. I walked to the beautiful oak secretary desk where she kept her things. It was usually a chaotic mess of receipts and magazines, but I saw a corner of a manila envelope peeking out from under a copy of Vogue. The return address was for a high-interest, subprime lender. The kind of place you go to when the banks say no. My hands were shaking, but my mind was unervingly clear. I slid the documents out. It was a loan agreement, a second mortgage to be precise, for $40,000 taken out against her parents' home. The part that made my breath catch, the part that felt like a physical blow, were the signatures on the final page. Paul and Donna's names, signed in a hand that was trying so desperately, so clumsily to mimic their elegant, old-fashioned script. It was Kimberly's handwriting. I knew her looping K and her sharp Y anywhere. Below their names was a notary stamp. It looked chillingly authentic. Then I remembered with a jolt that Kimberly's cousin, Michelle, had become a notary public 6 months ago. A cousin who idolized Kimberly and was notoriously naive. The betrayal wasn't just a forgery. It was a conspiracy, however small. I put the papers back exactly as I found them. I went to my office and, with methodical precision, I downloaded the bank statements from the joint account. I took screenshots of the withdrawal locations and times. I saved a PDF of the stationer's email. I created a new folder on my desktop and named it simply Proof. The pain came later that night as I lay in bed next to her. She was sleeping soundly, one arm thrown over my chest. She smelled like citrus and vanilla. My fiancée, the woman who was systematically draining our future, the woman who had roped her own cousin into committing a felony against her own parents. The vulnerability was suffocating. I had been so wrong about everything. My judgment, my intuition, my carefully constructed life. It was all a sham. But underneath the hurt, something else was hardening. A quiet resolve. This wasn't going to be a screaming match. It wasn't going to be a dramatic, tear-filled implosion. It was going to be a controlled demolition. And I was going to be the one holding the detonator. It took me 3 days to prepare. 3 days of acting normal, of kissing her goodbye in the morning and asking about her day at night. Each interaction was a fresh betrayal, a new layer of ice forming around my heart. I was no longer her fiancé. I was an anthropologist studying a particularly fascinating and predatory species. I chose a Thursday evening. I wanted the work week to be over for both of us. No excuses to flee to the office. I made dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta. The same meal we'd had on our third date. "Is everything okay, Andrew?" she asked, picking at her food. "You've been quiet." "I'm fine," I said, my voice even. "Just a lot on my mind. We need to talk about something." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply walked to my office and returned with my laptop. I turned it to face her and opened the proof folder. I clicked on the bank statement first. $35,000, Kimberly. Gone over 2 months. Can you explain this pattern of withdrawals? The shift was immediate and fascinating. First, denial. Her eyes widened in mock surprise. "What? That can't be right. There must be a mistake. Bank fraud." "There's no fraud," I said calmly. I clicked to the screenshots of the withdrawal locations and the scan teller slips. These were systematic. The big ones were in person. You signed for them. Where did the money go? Next came the gaslighting. Tears welled in her eyes. "Why are you accusing me? This is insane. You're tracking me now? I can't believe this. I thought you trusted me." "I did," I said. The words tasted like ash. "But I also trust mathematics. The money is gone. Where did it go?" She broke. The tears became real, ugly sobs. The victim phase. "It was for my parents. They were going to lose the house. Dad was too proud to ask you for help, and I knew you wouldn't understand. I was going to pay it all back." "Pay it back with what, Kimberly?" I asked, my voice still quiet. "The wedding money was our money. You didn't have a right to give it away without asking." "You have so much," she shrieked, the entitlement finally bubbling to the surface. "It's nothing to you. To them, it's everything." I took a deep breath. This was the moment. It wasn't just the wedding money, was it? I clicked open the PDF of the second mortgage. I zoomed in on the signature page on the notary stamp. This is a $40,000 loan. Forgery with Michelle's help, I assume. That's a felony, Kimberly. She stared at the screen, her face pale. The tears stopped. The mask of the victim fell away, and for the first time, I saw the cold, hard predator beneath. Her eyes narrowed. Her jaw set. "You went through my things," she whispered. It wasn't a question. "I did." She stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You will not breathe a word of this to anyone. Do you understand me? Especially not to my family. They wouldn't get it. You will ruin them. They're already on the path to ruin," I countered. "You put them there." And then came the threat. The line in the sand. "You think you're so smart, don't you, Andrew?" She hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You think you hold all the cards, but you have secrets, too. Little things you've told me in confidence. You tell anyone about this, and I will burn your life to the ground. I'll tell everyone you hit me. I'll tell your boss you've been cooking the books. I'll make sure every single person we know thinks you are a monster. So here's the deal. We're done. You pack your bags and you walk away, and you stay away from my family, or I will expose you. I looked at her, the woman I had planned to spend my life with, the woman I had loved, and I felt nothing but a profound, chilling emptiness. The love had been fully and surgically excised. I stood up and looked her directly in the eye. Not a word, I said. Then I went to our bedroom and started packing my suitcase. I did not say another word to her. I packed my clothes, my laptop, my toiletries. I left the pasta on the table. I left the engagement ring on the kitchen counter, right next to her plate. I walked out the door and did not look back. My plan was already in motion. Her threat meant nothing because she fundamentally misunderstood me. She thought I would fight her with emotion, with drama. She didn't realize I was going to fight her with something far more devastating. The simple, irrefutable truth. I spent 2 nights in a hotel, a sterile environment that perfectly matched my mood. My first calls were practical. I called our landlord, explained I was vacating the apartment due to the termination of my engagement, and formally requested to be removed from the lease, citing my ex-fiancée as the sole remaining tenant. I emailed him a brief, factual summary, creating a paper trail. I would lose the $2,850 security deposit, a small price to pay. I closed the joint account, transferring the pathetic $74.19 to my personal account. I changed every password I had. I blocked Kimberly's number, her email, and all her social media profiles. A digital exorcism. The core of my plan, however, was simple. It required no hysterics, no grand confrontation. It required only a single email. I spent an hour composing it. The subject line was stark, urgent. Regarding your property at parent's address. The body of the email was brief and devoid of emotion. Paul and Donna, I am writing to you with a heavy heart. Due to recent discoveries, my engagement to Kimberly has been terminated. I believe you need to be made aware of a significant financial liability taken out against your home. Attached, you will find a copy of a second mortgage document filed on March 12th with lender's name, as well as bank statements from a joint account that show where the initial funds were disbursed. I strongly suggest you contact the lender immediately and consult with a lawyer. I am so very sorry that you have been put in this position. I will not be commenting further on this matter. Sincerely, Andrew. I attached the 2 files, the scanned mortgage agreement and the bank statement PDF. I read it over a dozen times, ensuring it was nothing but facts. I was not accusing Kimberly directly in the email. I was simply presenting her parents with the documents. The documents would tell the whole story. Then I hit send. I sent it to Paul's personal email and Donna's work email, ensuring at least one of them would see it quickly. The response was faster than I anticipated. Less than an hour later, my phone rang. It was Paul. Andrew, what the hell is this? What is this email? His voice was a frantic, panicked bark. It's some kind of scam, right? A virus. Hello, Paul? I said. My voice as calm as a frozen lake. It's not a scam. All the information I have was in the email. A second mortgage. This letter from the lender. It's a demand for payment. Says the loan is in default. Andrew, this can't be real. What is going on? You need to talk to Kimberly, I said simply. And you need to call the lender listed on the document. Their number is on the letterhead. Kimberly? He sputtered. What does Kimberly have to do with this? She said you two had a fight, that you were being controlling and cruel to her. I cut him off, not unkindly, but with absolute finality. Paul, I'm sorry, but I can't be involved in your family's discussions. My only intention was to make you aware of the situation so you could protect yourselves. Please get legal advice. Goodbye. I hung up before he could respond. I then blocked his and Donna's numbers. My part was done. I had lit the fuse and walked away. The explosion was theirs to manage. For a moment, a wave of something that felt dangerously like guilt washed over me. Paul had always been kind to me. Donna had treated me like a son. But then I remembered Kimberly's face, contorted with rage, threatening to ruin my life after she had committed a felony against her own parents. The guilt vanished, replaced by the cold, hard certainty that I had done the only thing I could do. I hadn't sought revenge. I had simply delivered the consequences. They were now sitting on her family's doorstep, right where they belonged. The aftermath was not a single explosion but a series of controlled demolitions that leveled Kimberly's world. I didn't see it firsthand, of course. I had built a firewall between my new life and my old one. But information, like water, always finds a way through the cracks. It came in trickles through mutual friends who sheepishly called to check in and ended up spilling the details. My ex's initial strategy was exactly as she'd threatened. A scorched earth campaign against my character. She told everyone I was controlling, emotionally abusive, and that I had fabricated the entire financial story to punish her for leaving me. It didn't work. Her narrative was frantic, hysterical, and constantly changing. Mine, relayed secondhand through the landlord and the few friends I confided in, was quiet, consistent, and backed by a simple, unshakable timeline of events. People noticed things. They noticed I'd moved out quietly and methodically while she was frantically trying to cover the full rent on a place she couldn't afford. They noticed her increasingly desperate social media posts, which swung wildly between portraying herself as a heartbroken victim and a liberated woman living her best life, all while asking if anyone knew of a cheap room for rent. The real fallout, however, happened within her family. Paul and Donna, faced with irrefutable proof of the forgery and a very real demand for $40,000, had a choice. Report their only daughter for felony bank fraud and have her prosecuted or absorb the debt themselves. They chose to protect her from the law but not from the consequences. They didn't have the $40,000. The wedding money was gone. The truth about the loan money, as it eventually trickled out, was that the $40,000 cash from the second mortgage had vanished just as quickly. A hefty down payment on a luxury car she couldn't afford, lavish gifts for friends to maintain her image, and a desperate attempt to pay off older, high-interest credit card debt she'd hidden from everyone. She hadn't even used it to help her parents in any meaningful way. She'd used it to plug the holes in her own sinking ship. To pay off the fraudulent mortgage, they had to sell the house Kimberly grew up in, the one that was their only significant asset. A mutual friend told me she'd driven past their old street. A for sale sign was staked in the manicured lawn. The sale, I later heard, barely covered the primary mortgage, the fraudulent second one, and the realtor fees. Their retirement was gone. They were now renting a small condo on the other side of town. Their relationship with Kimberly was shattered. They hadn't turned her in, but they hadn't forgiven her either. The trust was annihilated. Paul, a man defined by his pride, had been publicly and privately humiliated by his own daughter. Donna, who had doted on Kimberly, was heartbroken. They were supporting her financially, but the warmth was gone. It was a transaction now, an obligation. Kimberly, for her part, never accepted an ounce of responsibility. In her version of reality, she was the ultimate victim. Victim of her parents' financial irresponsibility. Victim of a society that puts pressure on women. And most of all, victim of her cruel, vindictive ex-fiancé who couldn't handle being left. She lost her job, not because of anything I did, but because her work performance plummeted as her life unraveled. She left her muddy Adidas sneakers on my new rug once. It's a small, stupid detail, but it feels fitting. She tracked mess into a clean space and expected someone else to clean it up. As for me, the first month was hard. It was an exercise in rebuilding. I found a new apartment, a clean, minimalist space that was entirely my own. I went on the trip we were supposed to take for our honeymoon, a 2-week architectural tour of Spain, by myself. Standing in front of Gaudi's Sagrada Familia, a masterpiece of breathtaking complexity and structural integrity, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. It was a monument to a brilliant, methodical vision, a foundation that could withstand anything. There's no joy in what happened to Kimberly or her family. There's just a grim, quiet satisfaction. The satisfaction of a balanced equation. I never set out to destroy them. My only action was to present the truth. They did the rest. Their entitlement was the disease. I merely provided the diagnosis. Sometimes I wonder if Kimberly ever feels a flicker of remorse. I doubt it. People like her don't see their actions. They only see the consequences that happen to them. They will forever be the heroes of their own tragic stories. In her mind, I'm sure I'm the villain. I'm okay with that because I'm sleeping soundly in a home I built on a solid foundation. While she's trapped in the ruins of a house she burned down herself. And I never had to say another word.